The BC Human Rights Tribunal, which is responsible for handling the complaints of discrimination against people, has just blocked the testimony of not one, but two detransitioners and a gay man. That's odd. Why would they do that? Perhaps it's because they were going to be testifying on behalf of former Chilliwack school trustee Barry Neufeld, who's been an outspoken and staunch critic of the Western Canada SOGI 123 program and gender ideology being taught in schools. I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News, bringing you the other side to this story. It was 7 years ago when the BC Teachers Federation slapped Barry Neufeld with a hate speech case in the BC Human Rights Tribunal on behalf of the Chilliwack Teachers Association. This case is made possible thanks to British Columbia's censorship provision found in Section 7 of the Code that tells you if you say things that might lead to being hate or discrimination against a person, well, you can find yourself like Barry Neufeld. Barry Neufeld was a school trustee for many years and drew on his experience as a foster child and working with troubled youth as a probation officer to raise concerns over gender ideology being taught in schools and Western Canada's Sexual Orientation Gender Identity Program, SOGI 123, which among many things has paved the way for sexually explicit books like the ones you're seeing on the screen being normalized in your kids' schools' libraries. So here he is, 7 years later. You can catch many of my reports on the hearings so far at our special website called repealsection7.com. And you can also catch up on the hate speech case we're facing for bringing you the news about a violent trans activist there while you're there as well. Now, when this decision was going to be heard about whether or not testimony from two detransitioners and a gay man was going to be heard or not, I caught up with Barry Neufeld's lawyer, James Kitchen, to get his feeling on what he thought would happen.
You know what? The tribunal needs to hear this perspective, right? Obviously, we need to hear from the detransitioners and the gay people about this, who by the way, feel censored and silenced by the queer community, who is intolerant of anybody who says anything against their beliefs. And the tribunal, I don't have their ruling yet. They're reserving. They're going to give me their decision tomorrow, but I am concerned that they're not going to let these people testify because they're going to say it's so irrelevant we can't even hear what they have to say, which is really unusual in a legal proceeding, to not let a witness even testify at all because you've pre-decided that they're so irrelevant. And I think it will really be a miscarriage of justice if the tribunal does not let these witnesses in.
Well, lucky this is Rebel News. I've caught up with one of them. Her name is Faith. She's going to tell you what the tribunal wouldn't let be heard.
They're allowing, as far as I understand, other expert witnesses on the other side who, per their own admission, shouldn't be allowed. But the tribunal is still allowing them, yet they won't allow us, who have direct relevance, because we've been through the system of transitioning and detransitioning. Some of us are gay as well, and in being told that that's not relevant and that our opinions and our life experience is not relevant to the fact that teachers who are not medical health professionals are pushing a medical procedure on children seems a little relevant to me, but I'm not a lawyer. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a journalist, but you're right. I've been tuning into much of the hearing and hearing other testimonies that are testifying against Mr. Barry Neufeld. And they're talking about their feelings being hurt, not even the students' feelings being hurt.
I told my mom when I was younger, I thought I was supposed to be born a boy, and she assured me, no, that's just what a tomboy is. You're still a girl, though. And that was fine until I was about 15. There's a show called I Am Jazz that was running at the time. Jazz Jennings is a very popular mainstream transitioning individual. So that kind of made it seem like an option in my head that, oh, this could be what's wrong with me. And everyone just kind of caters to that and sends you to the experts, and you got to go to the doctors. And when I went to the doctor, they ended up deeming that I was trans, but they fast-tracked me. I did not go through the same counseling that other trans individuals are supposed to. I was only on hormones, like there are puberty blockers and then there's the cross-sex hormones. I was only on the puberty blockers for about 6 months. and then I don't even know if it was that long. And the testosterone itself, I wasn't even on for a year before they approved me for top surgery. But the diagnosing physician who said that I was trans did not know I had those mental health issues. So either the doctor didn't do a proper cognitive assessment, didn't have access to my medical health records. I don't really know what else to say other than she did not do her job as the physician. Um, and she was able to fast track me into a system and give me medication for a disorder that I didn't have because she didn't assess me properly. So in doing that, I was on the puberty blockers, I think a maximum maybe of like maybe 10 months. I don't even know if I was on them a full year. And I ended up stopping it myself. The doctors who were prescribing the medications had very little to do with that. And they ended up allowing me, I asked a question about birth control and said if I start this birth control because it's progesterone based rather than estrogen,
Yeah.
that won't affect the testosterone. And in my head, effectively, it does the same thing that the puberty blockers were doing. So I asked if I could just stop the blockers. And the injection lady who was giving me my puberty blocker injections, she, she looked at me and she said, "I don't know. We can try and see." Like
Jeez.
that was the mentality that they all have, is just they have no idea what they're doing. We're going to try it and find out what happens, and if anything goes wrong, then we can fix it. That was essentially how they treated me throughout the entirety of the transition.
So it sounds like they affirmed you into an unethical experiment and didn't even follow up, and kind of left you aside. Now, you mentioned having other mental health issues or mental health issues that you feel were overlooked and sexual abuse. Uh, Kelly Lynn Prairie was supposed to join us. She's not feeling well, but we have interviewed her for her story. Very similar when it comes to, this sexual abuse that happens that tends to get ignored, and yet all things gender dysphoria, whether you have it or not, are affirmed, but of course not even called gender dysphoria. Now, with having that background and being invited to testify on behalf of Barry Neufeld, what were you hoping to convey to the panel when you were being asked to address them?
As far as I am to understand the case itself, Barry himself is being targeted because he said things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he voiced an opinion of, if I understand the statement correctly, he said a very open-ended they,
Mm-hmm.
like anyone who is willing to transition a child without giving them proper information, that's comparable to child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I can tell, the other side who are going after him are completely targeting him on that for being hate speech.
Mm-hmm.
These people who are trying to defend it usually aren't trans. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what these procedures actually are. Like, they don't know the surgeries that are happening. They don't even think they're happening at all. They don't think that there's kids
Yeah.
getting their breasts removed. Kelly Lynn and I are proof that these surgeries are happening when they shouldn't, because I was approved for a double mastectomy at 17. I just chose not to have it.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, should not have just been up to me. Like, my insurance should not have just randomly covered that
Mm-hmm.
because a doctor said so once in the span of like 8 to 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that should have been a much longer term assessment so that they made sure that I was actually meeting that. And the fact that the so-called experts are experimenting on children and don't know what they're talking about, because even my physician didn't tell me what the puberty blockers did properly. She didn't know what the drugs did, and she explained it to me wrong. So even in terms of getting informed consent, they're not doing that because the doctors aren't properly informed, can't possibly be informing the patients, can't get informed consent from somebody who's not informed. And so it's just this whole backwards loop that these people in the tribunal specifically are trying to defend. I don't even think they know what's happening. Like, they don't know what they're actually defending here. Because if you look at some of these people who have the double mastectomies, now the doctors don't even care. they're not even trying to make it look good. Some of these girls can opt for no nipples, and it's a nullification surgery. Like, they're not being assessed for mental health issues at all. You're just allowed to modify your body for no reason other than you say you feel like it. These doctors are doing it. And this gentleman on a board can't question that without being called out for hate speech. That's ridiculous.
As you know, Rebel News is also being hit with its own Section 7 hate speech case, which is brought on by the infamous Jessica Serenity Simpson, better known as Jonathan Yaniv. That's right, that is the violent and actually racist trans activist who's assaulted our journalists and threatened our family. If you'd like to be a part of helping us defend ourselves in that case and our right to be able to tell you what's really going on with trans madness, please go to repealsection7.com and donate what you can.